Good afternoon. I'm Jenny Gibbs, a retired horticulturist from Illinois Central College, and I have been involved with Stroke Camp for over 9 years now. And I've enjoyed doing little plant projects with everyone in Stroke Camp, and we have a good time with that because I think most people are interested in plants. And I'd also like to say Happy Earth Day to everyone. How appropriate that we have plants here on Earth Day. I could just tell the oxygen that they're kicking out at us here. So we're going to talk about several different things about planting them and what culinary uses they have for them. So let me introduce my little friends here that we have brought along, and we have seed packets. And I'm sure a lot of you probably already cook with herbs. I like fresh herbs as much as I can, but sometimes, especially in the winter, you just gotta go with the bottled things, the dried things, but they're pretty good. The flavor is very intense on them. But today here we have chives, which are getting ready to bloom. I was heating them up, trying to get them to bloom today, but they didn't. Chives are very nice to have. If onions bother you, I'm starting to have digestive problems with onions, so chives are a milder type of thing. We have two different kinds of parsley here today, the Italian flat leaf and then the curly type. Now the flat leaf has a more intense flavor, and as you might be able to see from there, they're in the celery family. And they are so good in soups and sauces of all kinds, and they're a little bit easier to deal with than some of the curly type. But the curly type is used a lot in Asian cooking, and I also like to use it as a border in the flower beds. It looks so nice and neat. And they're very cold tolerant, so you can keep getting things off of them up until frost. We have dill here. And not only is dill good for the pickles, but, and that smells good, but it's really good in sauces. If you like salmon, dill makes a really good sauce for that. A lot of different dips and things to put on your food. We have here some rosemary, a couple different kinds of rosemaries we have here that are good for rubs on meats.
I didn't know there was more than one kind of rosemary, so talk to me, Jenny.
Well, there are a couple different kinds. There's a trailing one that really likes a lot of heat, and it kind of stays close to the ground, so if you like a little ground cover one. Now the rosemaries are not hardy in our area. They are not cold tolerant. And so they will either have to be dug and taken in or get a new one every spring.
So our viewer here from Texas can probably grow rosemary a lot longer than we can grow rosemary
She
here.
can probably leave hers out all winter long. Lucky them. I found this new one that's name was barbecue rosemary. And I thought, what's so barbecuey about that? It didn't taste like barbecue sauce to me or anything. But on the website, when you see it, it talks about barbecuing recipes. Oh, I know. It gets a very thick stem on it, and people use those woody stems as shish kebab skewers. And it infuses the flavor of the rosemary into the meat and the vegetables too. So I learned something new in doing my research for this. We also have Italian oregano. There's a lot of different kinds of oregano, but I think this is the most popular type of oregano, and going good with the basil. A lot of different kinds of basils, and this one's getting ready to need to be pinched to keep him from getting too long and lanky. So I'm going to give him a pinch here. Gotta have a good thumbnail for that. Give him a pinch so that it'll bush out more and won't be so tall and lanky that way. But I love making pesto. Pesto is one of my favorite things because you can put it on your pasta. I put it on just crackers and eat it, and that's very easy to make with your classic Italian basil. There's other types of basils too. One of them you might run into is Thai, T-H-A-I basil, the Asian type, used in Asian cooking, and it has a kind of an anise flavor to it. It's really very different than our regular familiar Italian basil. So it's kind of fun. So if you look on the labels at the garden center, then you can try one of those Asian type Thai basils. So let's see, last but not least maybe here is lavender. Now, I know we think of lavender as soaps and skin lotions and things like that, but it really is good for cooking with. It's good in teas. You can make tea. It goes good with lemon and cakes and cookies, believe it or not, and it gives a sweetness to it. So that's kind of a nice touch to that. Most all herbs have a medicinal use too, and so that's why we are given and gifted with these wonderful plants. Not only do they taste good, but they help our health. And the lavender is good for headaches, and it's good for insomnia also. So you might think about some lavender. These are really nice to put in the ground and have in the ground, but not all of us have great soil in our gardens, and most all the herbs do wonderful in container gardens as long as they have good drainage. And speaking of drainage, we're going to look at some soil and things. If you are going to start these from little seeds, like we've got little seed packets here. I don't know if you can see.
I'm going to close in on you,
Okay.
Jenny, with my little wheelie
Got
cart.
some nice little seed packets here. All kinds of different things. So we've got lavender and the parsleys and sage and oregano and rosemary, stevia. That's a real popular one now for the sweetening. Those of us who are diabetic can use that very easily. Chamomile. So if you're going to start these from seed, first of all, a little hint. What I do with my seed packets, rather than ripping the top off, because the name is always on the top. And so I have learned to pack these teeny tiny little seeds down into the bottom and open them from the bottom, and then you can take your popsicle stick or whatever and stick it up through there and stick it wherever you're planting them at. So here's another hint about little tiny herb seeds.
And there's no charge for that.
No extra charge for
Nope.
that hint.
Wow.
It's kind of like there's never any extra charge for weeds, you know. But it seems like all the seeds from these herbs are so tiny. When you pour them out in your hand, and you will see how teeny tiny they are. And here's the hint: don't sneeze when you've got all those teeny tiny ones in there. So not too many people use catnip themselves, but I have cats at home and had them at work and all, and I don't know if you can see how tiny those. I'd say don't sneeze. But what we're going to do with these is I've set up these little cups, which I put holes in the bottom of them. I punched holes in the bottom with my ice pick, about 5 or 6 holes, and you just put them on the top because they don't want to be buried very heavily. Some seeds actually like to be exposed to the sun, and some of them, if they don't want sunlight, then you just want to put a very light, delicate amount of soil sprinkled on them. And this is soil, it's not dirt. Actually, this planting, it's only dirt when you track it in on the carpet, but this planting mix actually has no soil in it. It is a combination of ground up peat and pine bark, vermiculite, the little white things on there, and perlite, or the white things. So it gives good drainage, but it has a good balance because it holds the mixture well, and those new tiny little roots can grow very, very easily through that. Another trick, if you are going to use these clear type of containers, is to try and plant some of your seeds close around the edge, and you can see the roots grow, and the kids love seeing the roots grow. That's kind of nice to do with a bigger seed, even like beans or marigolds, something like that, so they can see the little roots growing. Let's say we're talking containers here. These are good for starting. Some people who like to recycle their different kinds of containers. Use up that styrofoam. This is my 18 egg pack, and a lot of people like to start their seedlings in the egg container. And what's so nice about this too is it comes with a tray to catch the water from where you have punched holes in the bottom of each little egg cell area. So it's very important to have good drainage for these. They don't want to get overly soggy and wet, even when they're seedlings as well as when they're starting up. Another nice thing about this soil mix is that with the ground up sphagnum peat in it, that has a natural inhibitor for different soil-borne diseases. So when you have your garden soil, you get a lot of diseases in that, and this inhibits those. When you're going to water, and when these are teeny tiny little guys getting ready to start out, you don't want to pour a big cup of water onto the top of them. It works really nicely to give them a nice misting. And so it doesn't have to go all the way down to the bottom at first. And these are nice because you can see how far down your moisture is going. Light is very important after they have started sprouting. Now you don't really need to put them in the light while they're still down in the soil, but they are going to dry out quickly and easily, so you want to keep a daily eye on those. So we've talked about the different varieties we have here. Another thing about herbs is the majority of them want sun. They want as much sun as they can get. Now some of the parsleys can take some partial shade. Parsley, partial shade. So, and they want well-drained soil also. So if you've got some raised beds, that's good. If you have a heavy clay type soil in your yard and garden area, you would be smart to go ahead and put these in a large container of some kind. And they look nice and cute and little here, but they're gonna get big. So basils can get very big. Another important thing about the herbs, especially with the basils and the oreganos, is that in order to keep the essence of the plant, the taste of it in there, you want to be sure and keep the flowers pinched off of them. Otherwise, once they start setting flowers, the flavor tends to dissipate out of the leaves, so you want to try to
And that's
keep
true
them.
with all herbs.
Yes, exactly.
Pinch off the blooms.
Unless you want to let your dill go to seed if you're going to make those pickles or anything else you like dill in. So, but with most of them, I don't know, I don't take them off of the chives so much, but because they're pretty, you know, they're that little purple ball of blooms. So, but it's just kind of nice to go along and pinch them and smell them and keep a little piece in your pocket to take out during the day and smell it, and it'll make you so happy, especially the lavender. So, but as you're picking through and taking the tops of them off to keep them full and to keep them from going to flower and seed, and you can hold on to these until they build up, and then you can start making your pesto, or you can dry them. And if you get some of these type of dried things, I know my husband in his barbecuing likes to get these rubs. His favorite one is called butt rub for some reason. But so many of them have all these different herbs in them, and when you dry these, the flavor is very intensified in them too, but I like the fresh. This one is Herbes de Provence. It has the lavender in it. You wouldn't think that lavender would be good on meat and that, but it is. It just does something freshening to it. As we're talking about containers here, I have brought this in because I thought, oh, whoops.
The camera crew's not
There
so
we
well
go.
good
There
right
we
now.
go. I tried to get another kind of soda drink holder, but couldn't get my hands on one. But if you're filling up your pots, it's so handy to have one of these to put them in so that you don't have to be holding them. They don't tip over as readily, and it's easy to use, and it's easy to carry your pots of your plants in also. So
So I have a question.
yes,
It's Mary Lee, 6 feet away. What about transplanting? I've had like these size pots, and then I put them in a little bit bigger pot. If I want to transplant, just a little bit bigger pot, a lot bigger pot, or does it not matter so much with herbs?
Well, depending on where they're going to be eventually. If they're going to be in the ground eventually, you could probably keep it about this size because you've got a lot of roots in there. This one's going to be ready to go into the ground pretty soon. And when you do go to put these in the ground, you want to tickle the roots a little bit, tickle, so that they will get spread out and head out where they can get the most moisture and nutrients in whatever soil you've got them in. Not just if you're planting them in the ground, but if you're putting them in a flower pot container too. So tickle the roots on any of those and they will grow a lot better. Otherwise they tend to stay in that little clump type of thing. But when you go to transplant them out of your little original container, you can put them in something bigger for a while, and you just kind of pop it out. Hopefully it's got a good root system in it by then. I wouldn't take them out too early. You want them to have some good roots to hold them up with. And especially if you're going to go the egg carton way, the little plants are going to grow really fast. I actually don't use this myself in starting things because they grow up so quickly, so rapidly, that they get a little bit root bound in those. But you might want to try it and see what you think with that. As I said, well-drained soil, as much, probably at least 6 hours of sunlight a day would be preferable for those. And say all kinds of cooking possibilities. It just feels good and smells good. You can keep some going in the house, in the window, if you've got a nice sunny window for a while. So there are many different neat things you can do with them.
Let's talk about just real quickly, because we need to wrap up in a couple of minutes. Now, I have no trouble. I always keep basil, and so I use it with all the pastas and the caprese salad and all those sorts of things. I'm pretty good with oregano, Italian. I'm pretty good with parsley. What do you use your chives in? Do you cook with them, substitute them in place of like green onions? Or?
Yes, exactly. They're great. Say they're a little bit milder than certainly than the big onions, and then the smaller green onions. They're a more delicate flavor. But soups, salads, and you can saute them very well and easily. Yeah. So sauteing with butter.
I have a question from Midge.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Midge. And I'm laughing because I almost asked this question. Are any of these invasive? I've had trouble with mint being invasive, and I planted mint in a pot with several other things one year, and all you get is mint.
Yes.
So do these play nice in the sandbox or not?
These play well with others. Most of these are not going to sucker out underground like those crazy mints are. Oregano can spread somewhat, but not crazy. I have in here in the seeds somewhere in here, I had lemon balm, and it's in the mint family, and it is not as invasive, but in my yard where I planted it, and as it turned out, when my husband mowed over it, it smelled so nice. But it is in that mint family, the lemon balm, which is good in teas and little cakes and things, but it's not as crazy as regular mints get. Here's a little hint for other plants too. Everything in the mint family has a square stem, and as you feel that stem, you can kind of feel, oh, that one's round, but anything that is related to the mints, which this basil is, has a square stem, and in flowers like coleus and some different things like that have a square stem. Not that that means anything in particular, but it's just kind of interesting that that's a feature of related plants. So As I say, they do great in a container. If you live in an apartment and you have a balcony or a patio of some kind, you do not have to go without fresh herbs. Even if you've got a nice south window and want to keep fresh herbs going in your window, it can be very successful.